Welcome back to the classroom. You may be asking why Tool 7 is the next lesson. It's because I want you to understand where you're headed as you work through the rest of the tools. In the first lesson, I told you that running a business is an experiment, and I talked about how essential experimentation is for building and operating a business. So I want you to start with an experimental mindset. Instead of assuming that everything that you learn along the way is factual with 100% certainty, because the reality is you won't know if you're right until you get out into the real world and test things. And that's all experimentation is really about. If this sounds daunting, I want you to think about where you're already experimenting today in your creative practice. You probably already try things and measure the results and adjust your approach. That simple 3-step process is all you're going to be doing in the business world too. We're just going to add a little structure to it to keep you honest, to help you remove bias, and to help you move faster as you double down on the things that you find that work. So this lesson has 3 goals. First, I'm going to help you hone your experimental mindset. Second, I'm going to teach you an experimental method that you can use for business. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to apply it in the Creative Build workspace. So let's start with your mindset. Why does experimentation matter? It's because as a founder, you're going to make large decisions and small decisions every day. Smart decisions lead to success. Not so smart decisions lead to the other thing. The question is, how do you make smart decisions? And I want to go back to the old way of doing business versus the new way from our first lesson. So this is the old way of doing business. 100 years ago, business depended on one really smart person in charge of everything, making the decisions. There was one right idea, and there were many wrong ideas that would take a business off track. And those ideas could be taught in school. They were formulaic. Business followed predictable patterns. Markets followed predictable patterns. And that's because they didn't change much over time. But that's not how business works anymore. And in the first lesson, I talked about how business is actually a creative exercise and how the best business founders are creative professionals. In that world, the best decisions don't come from an individual. They come from collective intelligence. And there's often not one right answer. You have many ideas with infinite possibilities. That's a lot to sort through. And it's not something you can describe in a textbook. It's something that can only be learned through experimentation. So while we often think about business leaders as having confidence in their decisions because they just have a confident personality, I want you to rethink what confidence means. Confidence isn't a personality trait. Confidence is built by measuring actual results. It's built through experimentation. Now I want to show you how to experiment within a business. And this is going to look familiar to you, not just because you're creative, but because you went to school. We start learning about the scientific method early on in our childhood. We learn about a process of observation and hypothesis development and testing and analyzing results and using that to influence our perspective on the world. You're doing that intuitively when you experiment with your art. And business experiments look the same. All you need to perform a strong business experiment and accelerate your learning and make better decisions is a little bit of structure. So at the Creative Build, that's exactly what we're going to use, a little bit of structure. We're going to use something called test cards, just to help you organize your thoughts and your experiments as a business founder. If you think back to elementary school and the scientific method that you learned, this should sound familiar to you. You're going to start with a hypothesis. What do you believe to be true? It's a statement of fact that you haven't proven right or wrong yet, but you're going to try to do so through your experiment. The second section is your experiment. How are you going to test your hypothesis? And I'm going to give you examples of experimental methods along the way as I teach all the other tools. The third section is your success signal. How will you know if your hypothesis is right? Deciding what success looks like before you start an experiment removes bias from the results, allows results to speak for themselves, instead of just going out and confirming what you think you know. The observation section is where you document what actually happened in your experiment. What did the results look like? And once you have that, you can analyze what it means. What do the results tell you? And then what's your next move? What will you do differently in your business because of what you've learned? So rather than giving you examples of experiments here, I'm going to give you an example of an experiment at the end of every tool lesson from here on out. That'll help you see test cards in action instead of just leaving it theoretical. But next, I want to show you the actual tool in the Creative Build workspace. It's pretty simple. It looks a lot like the slide I just showed you. So let's take a look. All right, here we are at the Creative Build in Tool 7. And I got here just by clicking the number 7 in the title strip. All the tool pages follow a similar pattern. You have some information here at the top to help you get in the right mindset to use the tool. And then over here at the left, you have instructions on using the tool. And to get started, you click Start. So here's where you build your test card. So this should look familiar because it looks exactly like the slide you just saw. You have hypothesis, experiment, success signal, observation, what it means, and your next move in each of your test cards. And to help you track your experimentation, I've added some more information about each test that you're going to run. You should name every experiment. You should have a start date and an end date. And then to plan an experiment, you answer these first 3 questions. What do you think is true? What will you do to test it? And how will you know if you're right or wrong? And then you save it. And then then as your experiment happens, you come back and you add information on what you observed, what actually happened, what it tells you, and what you're going to do because of what you learned. Now, that information is added in a separate section here. This is the space to add new test cards. If you go down a section, this is the space where existing test cards are analyzed and edited. So this is where you measure your progress against all the experiments that you've run in your business. This becomes a powerful repository of business knowledge. When you add an experiment from a test card, it shows up here as planned, and you can change the progress to running or complete or paused, depending on the status of the experiment you're running. And when it's complete, you can add your observations, what it means, and what your next move is, and save the changes. So it's pretty simple. The last section on every tool page also looks the same. And this is a section called action cards. Action cards are going to help you build a plan for your business. And that's what I'll cover in the next lesson. Finally, every tool page on the site is a button down here that says share with your advisors, where you can share the results of the work you've done in the tool. This is a moment to get feedback from your advisors on anything you've learned. And it's also a moment to celebrate with your advisors, to tell them good news. The message will auto-populate, but you can edit it and send a message here. Hopefully you understand a little bit more about the role of experimentation in building and operating your business. And you feel motivated to bring the experimental mindset from your own creative work into the world of business. In the next lesson, I'm going to talk about business planning, because a lot of early founders think that building a formal business plan is the goal, which frankly sounds overwhelming to a lot of people. But there's hope, because in my opinion, formal business plans are irrelevant. I'm going to show you a better way.